Discarded resources. The Tory ships arrived on a rainy Thursday morning. They appeared without warning, massive silver discs hovering over every major city on Earth. Humanity had long debated what first contact would be like, whether aliens would come in peace or with weapons. The answer, it turned out, was neither. They came with contracts. Dr. Elena Reyes stood in the rain at Carnegie Mellon University, where she'd been department head of advanced robotics. Now she watched as Tory representatives toured the facility, their tall, elegant forms moving through human spaces with an air of polite disinterest. Their skin gleamed like burnished copper, and their 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern, blinked independently of each other. "Your technology is charming," said the lead Tory, who called himself Ambassador Krell. "Primitive, but resourceful. The Galactic Consortium welcomes Earth as a Class 3 civilization." Elena would later learn what that classification meant. Class 3. Technologically emergent, but not yet spacefaring. Suitable for resource extraction and limited labor contribution. Within 6 months, the treaties were signed by governments desperate for the medical technologies the Tory offered. Within a year, Earth's industrial infrastructure was repurposed to mine resources the Tory needed. And Elena Reyes found herself working at Processing Facility 27, sorting through alien trash. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent her career building robots that could identify and sort objects. Now she was doing the same work manually, categorizing discarded Tory technology into massive recycling bins. The facility sprawled across what had once been Pittsburgh's industrial district, 10 square miles of warehouses filled with alien refuse. "Reclamation Engineer Reyes, you're assigned to Bay 4 today," said her supervisor, a nervous man who had once been a bank executive. The Tory preferred to communicate through human intermediaries. Standard sorting protocols. Elena nodded and headed to her station. Bay 4 contained the newest shipment, components from decommissioned Tory ships, according to the manifest. As she began sorting, she noticed something strange. Unlike the usual random assortment of broken parts, these pieces seemed complementary. Connectors that might join together, power conduits that could link. By lunchtime, she had separated several components that appeared to be part of the same system. It violated protocol. She was supposed to sort by material type, not functionality. But curiosity drove her. Years of building complex systems had trained her eye to see patterns where others might not. Found something interesting. Elena startled, nearly dropping the component she was examining. Dr. Marcus Chen stood behind her, a slight smile on his face. Before the Tory, he'd been a quantum physicist at CERN. Now he analyzed waste material composition. "Just sorting," she said, too quickly. Marcus glanced at her organized piles, raising an eyebrow. "That's not the sorting protocol." Elena hesitated, then decided to trust him. "These components, they fit together. Look at the connection ports, the power flow design. It's like they're parts of a whole system that was deliberately disassembled." Marcus picked up one of the pieces, turning it over in his hands. "Why would they give us parts that could be reassembled?" "Maybe they don't think we can figure it out," Elena suggested. "They've made it clear they think we're barely more advanced than chimps." That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about those components, mentally fitting them together like puzzle pieces. The Tory's patronizing attitude had always rankled her. "Primitive but resourceful," Ambassador Krell had said. Perhaps it was time to show them just how resourceful humans could be. The next day, she smuggled out a small component, a risk that could cost her job or worse, but she had to know. In her tiny apartment, she examined it under a microscope she'd built from scavenged parts. The technology was beyond anything she'd seen, but not incomprehensible. It operated on principles she recognized, just evolved to a degree that seemed almost magical. Over the following weeks, Elena identified more components that seemed related. She enlisted Marcus's help, and together they began to map the connections between pieces. They needed more expertise, so they carefully recruited others. Aisha Wong, an electrical engineer, David Okafor, a materials scientist, Jin Park, a former Navy mechanic. They met in Alina's apartment, speaking in whispers despite sweeping for surveillance devices. The Tory monitored public spaces, but considered private homes too insignificant to watch closely. Another example of their arrogance. "I think it's a propulsion system," Jin said, examining their mapped connections. "See how these conduits would channel energy in a controlled flow? It's like a jet engine, but operating on principles I don't fully understand." "Quantum entanglement," Marcus suggested, pointing to key components. "These look like entanglement stabilizers. In theory, they could allow for faster-than-light communication, maybe even travel." "Are we seriously talking about building a spaceship from alien garbage?" Aisha asked, voicing the question they'd all been avoiding. Alina looked at the schematic they'd pieced together. "Not yet, but we're talking about understanding their technology, about proving we're not as primitive as they think." Their project grew slowly, carefully. They converted an abandoned subway maintenance tunnel into their workshop, bringing components one by one. They recruited selectively, a network engineer here, a structural engineer there, building a team of 20, then 30 of the brightest minds who had been relegated to sorting trash. 6 months in, they had assembled what appeared to be a functional power core. It hummed with energy when activated, giving off a soft blue glow, but no radiation their instruments could detect. "It's clean energy," David said in amazement. "Incredibly efficient. If we could replicate this technology." "One step at a time," Alina cautioned. "We need to understand it first." As they worked, they discovered something unsettling. The components didn't match known Tory design aesthetics. Their technology typically featured smooth, rounded edges and a silver-blue color scheme. These components were angular, with sharp lines and a darker, almost gunmetal coloration. "What if these aren't Tory components at all?" Marcus suggested one night. "What if they're from another species?" The possibility was troubling. The Tory had presented themselves as benevolent guides, helping primitive species like humans join a peaceful galactic community. They'd never mentioned other advanced civilizations. Their breakthrough came 9 months into the project. They'd assembled what appeared to be a central processing hub, a computer of sorts. When they connected it to their power core, strange symbols flashed across its surface. At first, they thought it was just a power-up sequence, but the patterns began to repeat, with subtle variations. "It's language," Aisha realized. "It's trying to communicate." They worked frantically to decode it, building an interface that could translate the alien symbols into something they could understand. After weeks of effort, they managed to establish basic communication. "Who are you?" They typed into their crude interface. The response came immediately. "Survivors." Survivors of what? Alina whispered, but she was beginning to understand. The components they'd been piecing together weren't trash. They were fragments of a civilization the Tory had tried to erase. "Teura, destroy our worlds," the entity responded when they asked. "We scattered our nenododulg, waited if or others to find it." "They're not just guides helping primitive species," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "They're conquerors. They eliminate advanced civilizations and subjugate the rest." As the truth sank in, a new alert sounded, one of their proximity sensors. Someone was entering the tunnel. Alina moved quickly, shutting down the power core and covering their work. The team scattered to emergency exits they'd prepared for just such a contingency. Through a hidden observation point, Alina watched as Tory security forces entered their workshop, led by human collaborators. They moved methodically, examining each piece of equipment. "Evidence of unauthorized technology assembly," said one of the human supervisors. "Class 4 violation." The punishment for Class 4 violations was reassignment, a euphemism for being sent to the mining operations on the moon, where few survived more than a year. Alina slipped away, her mind racing. They had to relocate to continue their work, but now they had a purpose beyond mere curiosity or pride. The entity, the survivor, had shown them the truth about their supposed benefactors, and it had offered something else, knowledge of how to fight back. As she hurried through the rain-slick streets, Alina thought about Ambassador Krull's words on that first day. Primitive, but resourceful. The Tory had underestimated humanity's capacity to learn, to adapt, to recognize patterns in discarded fragments. They had given humans their trash, and from that trash, humanity would forge a weapon, rising from the debris. 3 years after their workshop was discovered, Alina stood in an abandoned ore processing facility, deep beneath the Appalachian Mountains. What had once been a small team was now an organization of hundreds, working in shifts to construct what they now understood was a warship. The entity they'd discovered, which called itself Nexus, had revealed itself to be a distributed artificial intelligence, fragments of which had been embedded in key components of its creator's technology. The Autorites, as they called themselves, had faced extinction at the hands of the Tory centuries ago. In their final act of defiance, they'd scattered their technology across the galaxy, embedding within it the seeds of their consciousness and the blueprints of their most advanced weapons. Power alignment complete, reported Jin, now their chief engineer. The central chamber of their facility housed the nearly completed vessel, sleek and predatory, unlike the disc-shaped Tari craft. Its hull gleamed with a dark iridescence that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Stealth systems, Alina asked, reviewing diagnostics on her tablet. Fully operational, Aisha confirmed. The quantum displacement field generates a bubble of space-time distortion that should render us effectively invisible to Tory sensors. The resistance had grown as news of the Tory's true nature spread through carefully encrypted channels. Mining colonies on the moon had staged riots. Processing facilities reported increasing equipment failures. It wasn't enough to drive the Tory away, but it created distractions that allowed the resistance to gather resources and recruit. Marcus approached, his face grave. Nexus has decoded more of the Autorate database. You need to see this. In their secure communications room, the AI's interface glowed with a soft blue light. I have discovered the true purpose of Earth's occupation, Nexus announced, its synthesized voice resonant yet somehow hollow. The Tory follow a pattern. They select worlds with compatible biospheres, extract resources, and then terraform the planets to suit their biology. Terraform. Alina felt her blood run cold. You mean they plan to change Earth? The process has already begun, Nexus confirmed. Atmospheric composition has been altered by 0.4% since their arrival. Soil bacteria are being systematically replaced with Tory-compatible microorganisms. Within approximately 30 Earth years, the planet will become uninhabitable for humans, but perfect for Tory colonization. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just subjugation. It was a slow-motion extinction event. We need to launch, Alina decided. How soon can the ship be ready? The Whisper is at 94% completion, Nexus replied, using the name they'd given the vessel. Critical systems are operational, but weapons integration is incomplete. We don't have a choice, Alina said. The Tory are planning a major security sweep of this region next week. If we're discovered again, we won't get another chance. The next days passed in a blur of activity. Final systems were installed, test sequences run, emergency protocols established. They'd managed to build a network of supporters across Earth and the lunar colonies, people who would rise up when the moment came. The night before launch, Alina couldn't sleep. She walked through the quiet facility to the main chamber where the Whisper waited. Its form seemed to shift in the dim light, edges blurring as the stealth systems cycled in standby mode. You doubt our chances, Nexus observed, its voice emanating from a nearby console. We're one ship against an armada, Alina said. And most of us have never been in space, let alone combat. The Autorates faced similar odds, Nexus said. They were not warriors by nature. They were scientists, artists, philosophers. But when extinction threatened, they adapted. Humans share this quality. Is that why the Autorites chose to hide their technology in Tauri waste? They were looking for species that could adapt, that could see patterns others missed. Yes, Nexus confirmed. The Tauri's greatest weakness is their arrogance. They believe themselves superior to all other life forms. They do not expect resistance once they have established dominance. Elena placed her hand on the Whisper's hull, feeling a faint vibration beneath her palm, like a heartbeat. Then we'll show them how wrong they are. Launch day arrived with a storm that provided perfect cover. The mountain facility had been built around an old mining shaft that reached nearly a mile into the earth. Modified to become a launch tube, it would allow the Whisper to accelerate underground before emerging 50 miles away, in a remote wilderness area. The crew of 43 took their positions, the minimum needed to operate the vessel effectively. Elena sat in the captain's chair, a position she'd never wanted, but had been voted into unanimously. Launch sequence initiated, announced Aisha from the navigation console. Inertial dampeners at maximum. Elena felt a momentary doubt. They were scientists, engineers, civilians pressed into becoming soldiers. But then she remembered what waited if they failed. The slow death of Earth, transformed into a world where humans could no longer breathe the air or grow food in the soil. Launch, she commanded. The Whisper shuddered, and then shot forward with impossible acceleration. The inertial dampeners strained, gravity pushing them back into their seats despite the technology. They rocketed through the launch tube, emerging into the storm-torn sky like a dark arrow. Stealth systems engaged, Jin reported. No indication of Tauri detection. They rose through the atmosphere, the ship moving with increasing grace as it entered its natural environment. Earth receded below them, a blue marble veined with clouds. Their first target was a Tauri communications relay in high orbit, one of dozens that maintained the aliens' control over Earth's systems. As they approached, Elena felt a surreal calm. After years of hiding, of working in shadows, they were finally striking back. Weapons range in 30 seconds, Marcus announced from tactical. Targeting systems locked. The Whisper's weapons were based on Autorate technology, quantum disruption beams that didn't so much destroy matter as phase it into another dimension. No debris, no radiation, just absence. Fire, Elena ordered. A pulse of darkness erupted from the Whisper's forward arrays. The Tauri relay station simply ceased to exist, leaving nothing but empty space. Alarms immediately blared as Tauri defense platforms registered the attack. 2 patrol ships altered course, heading toward their position. They can't see us, Jin reminded them, but they know something's there. Set course for lunar orbit, Elena commanded. We need to contact the mining colonies. The Whisper accelerated, leaving the patrol ships behind. As they approached the moon, they broadcast on frequencies the resistance had established. To all humans on lunar colonies, Elena transmitted, "This is the Whisper. The Tauri are not our benefactors. They plan to terraform Earth, making it uninhabitable for humans. We have struck the first blow against them, but we cannot win alone. The time for resistance is now." Responses came immediately, some confused, some jubilant. The lunar colonies had suffered under harsh Tauri rule, and many were ready to fight. Multiple Tauri vessels leaving lunar orbit, Marcus reported. They're mobilizing their fleet. Elena had expected this. The Whisper alone couldn't defeat the Tauri, but it could expose them. Broadcast on all frequencies, she ordered, not just to humans, to every system in range. The message they sent contained everything. The Autorate history, the evidence of other civilizations the Tauri had conquered, the terraforming plan for Earth. Most crucially, it contained Nexus's complete database on Tauri technology, including weaknesses the Autorites had discovered before their fall. Tauri flagship approaching, Aisha warned. It's Ambassador Krull's vessel. The massive ship dwarfed the Whisper, its silvery hull gleaming in the sunlight. It opened fire, energy beams slicing through space where they had been moments before. Evasive maneuvers, Elena ordered. Keep broadcasting. The Whisper danced through space, its agility surprising even its crew. They couldn't outgun the Tory flagship, but they could outmaneuver it. Message from the flagship, Jin announced, surprise evident in his voice. There, requesting to parley. Elena exchanged glances with Marcus. Put it through. Ambassador Krull's face appeared on their main view screen, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly, a sign of agitation they'd learned to recognize. This insurrection is pointless, he said, his voice as smooth and cultured as ever. You cannot hope to defeat us. Return to Earth, and we will show mercy. We've exposed you, Elena replied. Not just to humans, but to every species in the consortium. They know now what happens to civilizations that advance too far. They're erased, their worlds terraformed, their people subjugated. The strong survive, Krell said simply. The weak serve or perish. This is the natural order. No, Elena countered. Cooperation is the natural order. Diversity creates strength. You've been eliminating potential allies, potential innovations, because you fear anything different from yourselves. Krull's upper eyes narrowed. Your primitive philosophy changes nothing. You have one ship. We have thousands. We have the truth, Elena said. And we've just broadcast the location of every piece of Otterite technology the Tory have discarded across 100 worlds. 100 resistance movements will rise from your trash heaps. Your empire is built on sand, Ambassador. As if to punctuate her words, alarms blared on the Tory flagship's bridge. An officer approached Krell, speaking urgently in their native tongue. The lunar colonies, Marcus whispered to Elena. They're rising up. Krell's face contorted with rage. This changes nothing. You will be crushed like the Otterites before you. The Otterites weren't crushed, Elena said. They're here, now, in every piece of technology you carelessly discarded. They waited, and they found us. We'll do the same if we have to. Humans are very good at turning trash into treasure. The communication cut abruptly as the Tory flagship fired again. This time, a glancing blow struck the Whisper's port side. Hull breach on Deck 3, Jin reported. Sealing now. We've done what we came to do, Elena said. Set course for the Kuiper Belt. We'll rendezvous with the other resistance cells there. As the Whisper accelerated away from Earth, emergency broadcasts filled their communications array. All across the globe, humans were rising up. The Tory, facing unexpected resistance, and with their lies exposed to the wider galactic community, were suddenly fighting a war on multiple fronts. Will it be enough? Marcus asked quietly, standing beside Elena as they watched Earth recede on their view screens. I don't know, she admitted, but we've given humanity a chance, and we've shown the galaxy what happens when you underestimate a species you consider primitive. The Whisper vanished into the darkness of the outer solar system, its stealth systems rendering it invisible to all but the most advanced sensors. Behind it, Earth glowed blue and white against the blackness of space, still home, still worth fighting for. And in recycling centers and waste processing facilities across 100 worlds, other species began to look at Tory trash with new eyes, searching for patterns, for connections, for the whispers of resistance that had been waiting all along.